What's so fun to me is getting to watch on the regular these corporate individuals that are coming and transitioning over, and they're really freaked out by the fact that this is a totally new industry and they don't know anything about staging and design. And then we bring them in and they go, wait a second. I'm using all the same skills I had. I understand all of this. This is quick and this is easy to understand because they already have built these muscles. They already have the skills necessary to set themselves up for success for a new business model. It just happens to be instead of selling banking or whatever it may have been, now they happen to be selling interior design and home staging services.
Welcome back to the Kronos Group Podcast. Happy to have you here. Obviously, we are operators, founders, and builders who come together and try to hear some real strategy. And today we're talking about systems and scale and design in a space most people think of, I think, as a lifestyle. And this one is good for me because what we're here to talk to Alisa Sparks about is something that I am terrible about, having used her services, not her specific services, but design services and in particular staging services in the many, many, many houses that I have built, bought, and sold over the years. So I'm excited about this conversation. And we're going to talk to her about her business. She is Alisa, the founder and CEO of Linden Creek, and they are a luxury interior design and home staging brand, and they are built on meaningful spaces and smart frameworks. From corporate finance to Navy contracts to staging million-dollar homes and running an expanding franchise network, she is busy, and her journey is about spotting needs others missed and building solutions that last. And she also leads The Shop, which is an e-commerce destination for curated decor, and another company called ArchD, which is a CRM and inventory platform that supports the industry at scale. You can tell she has a lot going on. Let's talk to her. Alisa, I welcome you to the Kronos Group Podcast. How are you?
I'm good, Jerry. Thanks so much for having me today.
Absolutely. That is quite an introduction there, all of those things considered. So let's start just at the beginning. Obviously, you've got not a linear path to where you ended up, obviously, which is kind of cool about your story, where you go, as near as I can tell, from finance and military contracting to staging luxury homes. That's quite a swing. So let's go back to kind of the beginning. How'd you start? And then we'll get to where you ended up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am a numbers girl through and through. So I went to school for finance and landed in corporate finance because of that. I'd spend my days running profitability analyses for banks and just making sure that when they're pricing products, they're pricing them in a way that they make money. And from there, pivoted to working for the Department of Defense. I supported both the Navy and the Marine Corps over about a decade and managed multi-million dollar budgets for aircraft in various different departments and really enjoyed the systems around it. I loved the culture that was a part of the military and all that they did. But I always found myself having this creative itch throughout that journey. And so when I finished my 9 to 5, I would find myself buying the ugliest house I could find. I saw the potential, I saw what it could be. And so I'd spend a couple years living in the home, fixing the whole thing up, flipping it. And then once it was done, it was like, well, the project is over. There's no more fun. So let's sell it. Let's find another ugly one and bring it back to life. I would build furniture in my free time as a hobby. And then it would turn into, hey, can you build furniture for me? And so next thing you know, I'm building furniture for customers that are custom pieces that were quality, and I really enjoyed that. But I was always trying to find a way to fulfill this creative itch. And my kind of turning point of entrepreneurship probably started very similar to lots of your listeners. But I was at the gym one day and I was listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And he talks a lot about the importance of building true wealth and kind of pivoting away from that 9 to 5 W-2 and building something of true value. And it was this moment for me where I thought maybe I needed to take this creative itch that I had and find a way to build a business around it. And so I started Linden Creek as a home staging company. I, at the time, had just put a home on the market, and the feedback that we got on it was that the staging was fantastic, but it wasn't staged. It was just my furniture that I kind of pieced together over the years. And so I decided, hey, why not try my hand at staging? I don't have an interior design degree. Clearly, I thought I couldn't be an interior designer. And so staging felt like a next best solution. So my goal was over about 12 months, hopefully to be able to transition out of my full-time job, be able to transition into this full-time career if it worked. And if it didn't, I still had my safety net behind the scenes. And so I would take PTOs on Friday. I'd hire a nanny to come take care of my kids. And I would go out on Fridays and knock as many doors for real estate agents and builders as I could get my hands on and tell them about the services that I was offering. And fast forward about 4 months, I found myself in a position where my schedule was so booked with staging jobs and projects. We were growing so rapidly that it was this moment of, I have to quit my full-time job and we're going to take a leap of faith and we're going to do this. And that was really the start of Linden Creek and what brought me to the business that I had today. And over the years, it's really transformed into something much larger than I ever even dreamed of. But one of the things that I love about your podcast is you say, like, business is a game. This is just the game that we're all a part of. And there's something so beautifully addictive about business, in my opinion, where once you start to get a taste for it and a feel for it, you just want to do it more. And so that's really where I found myself over these years, is to starting just as a home staging company out of Raleigh, North Carolina, to today deciding to venture into franchising, building software systems that are going to really support our industry, and blending something creative and beautiful that I love with true business, and building systems around something that oftentimes is not systematized.
A lot there. And I want to catch two things in particular. One is, it sounds like the game of business. I agree 100%. That is, I love the game of business. It sounds like you're doing something that you truly love doing. I've often said, and so I'm quick to point out whenever somebody is doing that, I've not made a single dollar in all of my years and all of my businesses doing something I love. Right? I love to work and I'm passionate about it. I take the money that I earn from doing those things and then I go do the things that I love. If you could do anything in the world to make a living, is this it? Are you doing what you love?
It's interesting. I am doing what I love, but, and this is a really big but, I had this philosophy years ago that you should do what you love and you're never working a day in your life, right? We've all heard that saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, if I do interior design, I'm doing what I love every day. But something really interesting happened when I started the company. Several months in, I landed my first interior design job. We did the big HGTV reveal. The homeowner came in, tears in her eyes, and just said, "Thank you. This ultimately transformed my life and who we are and how we function and we live." And that moment pivoted for me. And all of a sudden, I wasn't doing what I loved because I loved decorating anymore. I was doing what I loved because I found myself serving other people. And as the years proceeded in business, then it shifted to team members that I was developing and nurturing, and now franchise owners that we're developing and nurturing. And what I love has changed over these years, where I just find, as long as I create purpose and meaning in what I'm doing, as long as I have a resounding why of what I do, the reality is, whether I'm doing it with interior design and decorating, or heck, we're doing it with a totally different industry that maybe isn't quite as sexy and fun, it is still so fulfilling because it's feeding into other people. And that really is the reason that I love what I do.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm happy to hear when somebody gets to that point. Let's go back to when you started. You decide you're going to go on design. You said something, you didn't purposely gloss over it real quick, but I think it's very important here. And you said you went out and you were knocking on doors. So I want to dive into that a little bit more, as I work with, in particular, younger entrepreneurs, but specifically people coming out of college getting into the business game. I'm quick to tell them that if you can knock on a door and make a sale, you can do anything in business. I mean, just absolutely, it's the hardest job in the world to do. It's when I first started my business, I did incredibly well. I did 4, 8, 12, and $14 million a year in revenue in my first 4 years. I was fantastic at selling. I was really not very good at selling profitably. And so the sales came really quick. So if you can sell something door to door at a profit, I think that is a fantastic education for anybody getting started. And so where you said that you went and you knocked on doors, let's peel that open a little bit more and tell us exactly what your mindset was there in just getting that started, because I find that is, it's just so hard to do. And it's the hardest part. We all come up with our program and we got what we're going to sell and we got our deal that we're ready to go with, and we get all the infrastructure and all the rest of things. But then you have to go execute, and that executing is knocking on those doors. And it is, for me, and I think historically for most, just the hardest thing in the world to do.
It really is. And I, at the heart of it, was never a salesperson. I've probably become one now and really honed in those
Yeah,
skills.
we
But
all we
I'm,
I hear that from so many entrepreneurs, and I believe the same thing, but it's absolutely not true, is it? I mean, you just are by nature if you're an entrepreneur.
That's probably true. But
Yeah.
I was used to getting to hide behind a computer screen and playing in Excel spreadsheets all day. And so to go from that sort of atmosphere to I need to put myself out there, I need to sell a product that, I don't necessarily have this massive portfolio on right now, was really scary. But I think what's important is as an entrepreneur, you have to come down to this pivotal moment of your business has to succeed or else failure is not an option. And once you have that mindset, you're willing to put yourself in really uncomfortable situations over and over again, and that's where that growth really happens. And so for me, there are marketing strategies out there. Of course, there are paid ads you can do, there are emails, there are phone calls you can make. All of these things work, but we as a society are inundated by ads, whether it's email or text messages or phone calls. The number of spam calls or people that have tried to sell me something today alone is insane. And so I just took this philosophy of if I wanted to cut through the noise and I wanted somebody to actually pay attention to what I was providing, I had to do something different than what most people are willing to do. Because most people feel safer hiding in their office and
Hmm.
sending out 150 emails every single day instead of actually knocking on doors. The other piece of it is we are really in a service-based industry. And so the secret sauce to our business is to build relationship with these other business owners in this instance, and that really secures this reoccurring revenue. So when I land a builder or I land a real estate agent, it's not just one job that I've landed. They come back to me 3 times a year, 10 times a year, every single year, and that book of business is compounding. And so it changes your mindset of like, let me close a sale, and the conversation really becomes, let me build a friendship with somebody, let me figure out how I can serve them and make their business better, help them be more successful. And when you change that framework in your brain outside of I'm trying to sell you something into I just want to get to know you and I want to make your world better, suddenly it doesn't feel quite so intimidating. And when you take that approach, I found it so much more accessible to receive the feedback and build those relationships.
Yeah, I agree. How long was it from the time you knocked on that, you got that babysitter to take on the kids, and you're knocking on that first door to when you got your first sale? How long was that? And approximately how many doors do you think you knocked on?
Yeah, I think I knocked on at that time probably about 12 doors,
Yeah,
which doesn't sound like that many. But I think, the other thing that's interesting is we find oftentimes people give up really fast. Hey, I knocked on three and nobody answered the door,
yeah,
or they didn't call me back. It is a numbers game through and through. And what's interesting is what I thought at the time was like a strategy to get me on my feet and started is actually the strategy that we use for every one of our franchise owners when they hit the ground running. They're walking into these new locations, new regions. Nobody's ever heard of Linden Creek. And so we say, you need to give gifts. You need to get in front of these people. And it's amazing to me the response rate that people are seeing and the conversions that they're seeing. But it doesn't happen on the first knock. You're going to get some no's. But if you take that approach of like, that no got me this much closer to my yes, you just keep going and build resilience throughout it.
yeah. I agree 100%. I tell the story all the time. I had a nephew. I'll tell you it really quick. He had just graduated from the University of Tennessee, and he and his friends were lamenting on social media that I happened to catch that they had gone to 3 or 4 interviews and no one was hiring, and there was this grand conspiracy against them because here they had this fantastic new degree and nobody was hiring them to do the job after 3 or 4 interviews. And so I was quick to call him up, and he tells the story. This has been years ago now, telling him 3 or 4, come back and talk to me when you've gone to 100. Now,
Yes.
then you have some experience and some idea whether or not you got any value there, because 3 or 4 is just not enough to even get started. So you were lucky to get there in the 12, but at the
Yeah.
same time, the luck was what you created by getting out there, because many people could go and knock on 100 doors and not have the success you did that early on.
Yeah, and I think there's something really refreshing, at least to me, about it knowing it's a numbers game,
Yeah,
because then it takes the pressure off of like they're not rejecting you as a person, they're not rejecting the service or the product that you are selling. It is just statistics. And so if I need to get in front of 100 people to get a response, well, let's get through our 100 people because
right.
eventually somebody is going to have a yes. And so being persistent in that is huge, but there is success on the other side of it, undoubtedly.
Let's talk about staging. Define staging for, again, I always make the mistake of assuming that everyone knows what I'm talking about because I know about it. So I'm trying not to make those mistakes on a regular basis here on the podcast. So let's run through real quick, describe for us what a stager is and what they do.
Absolutely. So Linden Creek offers two services, interior design and home staging, and those are often confused, but there's a really big difference. Interior design is, hey, I've moved into my house. I want it to feel like my forever home. Help me pick out my permanent furniture, figure out what fixtures I want in my home. That's interior design. Home staging is really a marketing game. We say we are a partner in your marketing efforts. And so we walk into an empty home and we really strategize on what demographic do we feel like is going to be purchasing this home? Is it empty nesters? Are they a young family? And then we create a design plan kind of around that demographic that even thinks about where we want your eye to look up and highlight different architectural features, where we maybe want the buyer to not pay as much attention to some of the flaws of the home, and really guide the buyers through the home based on the furniture path and things of that nature to help it sell for top dollar.
I am absolutely a customer of this product, and also I am the one, I have no artistic capability whatsoever, and that's terrible for a home builder. And so I rely on other people to tell me what things should look like, but I know what I like when I see it. And so as a buyer of homes over the years, a staged home or even a furnished home that somebody's living in that's well furnished, it gives me an idea of what that's going to look like, and it makes it that much more enticing for me. So I agree with the process. I also understand, and I think I don't have the data to back this up, but I believe the industry data is that a staged home can get sometimes 5 to 10% more money on the house, probably for the same reasons that it gets me, that people can actually visualize what that is going to look like. I've staged many a house that I've sold over the years, and I've sold hundreds, and I think that is probably the case, but again, that's just observational. What is your real life experience on that? Again, if I look at industry statistics, they tell us that the house will sell, again, anywhere 3 to 10% more. Has that been your experience, or is it more a matter of it just helps them sell and maybe sell quicker?
We see both. It definitely helps them sell faster, but it also helps them sell for top dollar and sell for more. One of my favorite case studies is a townhouse that we had staged. But what was interesting is 3 months before that, the same exact townhouse, just like two buildings over, had gone on the market. It was completely empty, and it took about 5 months to sell, but it finally sold empty. We came in, we staged the same exact floor plan, but a couple houses down, and it sold $60,000 over the previous comp, and also only sold in 3 days. So you want to see a perfect A/B comparison. That is it right there. And it's fascinating to me because the reality is the reason staging works is because people are emotional buyers. People buy on emotions. And it's really hard for a buyer to have this connection with a home when all they see are walls and finishes.
Mm-hmm.
But when you tell a story inside of a home, when you're furnishing it and setting up a kitchen in a way that now maybe the wife is thinking about what it's going to be like to cook in the kitchen, or where the kids are going to nestle in and do their homework, they're all of a sudden creating these memories inside the home without even realizing it. And that is the thing that actually sells the home. So it is very interesting that it works, but we have seen again and again and again, the statistics are there to really support it selling for top dollar.
Yeah, that's interesting because the first thing that I look at as an investor, but more specifically, is if a house that we're going to move into, again, is what's the functionality of the house? What's the layout? Do I like all of that? But 100%, it is better for my Neanderthal brain with zero artistic ability whatsoever to see it staged. And that, to your point, if I had two houses that weren't, one house was unstaged and one was staged, I'm always going to go towards that staged house, all things being equal, 100%. So that's really, really interesting. So on the staging, as I was doing my research about you, and I think I got this right, staging seems like a one-off, very personal thing. Again, for a Neanderthal brain like mine, I couldn't imagine walking in there. Now I got to come up with a new program for this house, and I got to come up with new staging for this house. I mean, it just makes my brain want to explode. But it looks like you brought some strategies into it, maybe some systems that you could have some repeatability in that versus having to do that one-off creative work every single time while still providing that top-end service that really makes those houses pop. Do I have that correct?
You absolutely do. And maybe it comes from that numbers myth, brain, from the backside of things. But what's interesting is a lot of individuals in the industry are creatives at heart. It is art. I know I had lunch the other day with another stager, and we were talking, and she goes, I just walk into a room and I wait and I feel it and then I execute. And I thought, oh boy, there is nothing wrong with that, but that is the absolute opposite of what I do when I walk into a home. We really do have a system to it. And it really came down to me studying well-known designers and how they really space plan and function in a space, and then executing that again and again. So we take this philosophy where you walk into a room and you're going to measure for what size rug you need. On average, a rug should sit about 18 inches away from a wall. So again, math equation. Let's figure out the rug size. Now, if it's a 9 by 12 rug, there are 3 furniture layouts that work really well. So you pick A, B, or C. Once you have your furniture layout, you maybe now know you need 2 sofas, an accent chair, a coffee table. And so there's this pre-done sort of plan that really happens. And we are really methodical in the staging industry about using lots of neutrals. I like to joke and say we're really boring, and we're boring on purpose, because if I have really cool, funky orange accent chairs, 70% of people are not going to love my cool, funky orange accent chairs. 30% will. And I want everybody to love everything that I put into a house, because then they're going to love the home. And so we do a lot of whites. We do a lot of light grays. We do a lot of linens and neutrals for a couple reasons. One, nobody's offended by them, which means it's a win. But 2, it also allows me to play and put all of my furniture pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle at any given time, which optimizes things for me logistically behind the scenes in my warehouse. When I may be running low on inventory, I can just grab 2 sofas quick off the shelf, and I know they're going to play really well together. And so we really think about the logistics and the puzzle playing in staging on an ongoing basis, and it allows us to execute these designs pretty quickly, but still customize them for each home, thinking about, again, those architectural features we want to highlight and the ones that we kind of want to distract from.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I want to really point this out. I work with business owners who are artists, and they in construction, all the way through to music and painting and museums and clothing stores and things of that nature. And artists, let's just be frank, are not very good business people, because they're so passionate about their art and they're so passionate about their colors and the things that they do. And it can make it difficult for them to be profitable business owners, I should say. Not impossible, but it is a barrier. And so hearing you say that you put the systems in place, I wanted people to hear that, because you're still providing that creative product to the client. It's just inside of the system that you've built, a system that you know works based on having done this X number of times. And it eliminates that, I don't know, let's say that stubbornness that might come from wanting to make sure that it is artistically perfect and beautiful.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what's interesting is I started staging houses thinking I'm going to spend my time designing these beautiful homes. This is going to be exciting. And I realized the thing that kept me up late at night that I was still working through was always the logistics. It was, how do I be more efficient? How do I fit more things in my warehouse? How do I safely store art so it's not getting damaged? The reality is this is a heavy logistics-based business that happens to do some creative things sometimes. And so when you reframe it that way, again, we talked earlier today about I thought that I was doing something that I was passionate about and that I loved, and I do love it. But the reality is this is a business just like every other business, and we spend more time on the businessy things and the logistics than we do on the creative element, for sure.
And from a business perspective, the less colorful the color palette of furniture and all of those things that go with that help you reduce your inventory numbers, make the things more redundant, thereby saving money on inventory costs and capital expenses for new furniture and things of that nature. So the system makes sense both on the financial side, I'm going to assume, as well on the customer serving side.
That's exactly right. And when we bring in new franchise owners, we teach a lot of these philosophies. So if you have a piece of furniture and it can't go in 3 of the 4 houses you just staged, you have no business buying it, because it's going to sit on your shelf. It's going to to take up space, and that space costs you money. We take that same approach even when it comes to our vases and our accessories and our bowls that go. If you have a setup that's beautiful, but you can only use it in one in every 10 houses, it's taking up space and that's costing you money. And so we really like to have versatility in everything that we own.
Yeah, that's fantastic and a great lesson for everybody. You went to franchising, so let's go into that a little bit, which is really interesting to me. As I was reading your bio and I saw the franchising, in my head that didn't equate. So talk to me about that. That's fantastic. I'm happy for you, and it's a beautiful thing about business because no matter, I've been around it forever. And just when I think I know a little bit, I figure out I don't know anything. And here you are franchising a staging and creative design business. So I'd love to hear more about A, what kind of pushed you to do that, but B, also the process of franchising, because I think that is a great way for many prospective entrepreneurs in particular to get started. So tell us about kind of what pushed you in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started Linden Creek about a year into the business, I found myself a single mom. I had a little 3-year-old and 4-year-old daughters. And so my biggest priority was to be in the carpool lane by 2:30 every single day, full stop. I didn't have family that lived nearby. I just had to figure it out. And so what I thought at the time was this like massive disadvantage to my building a business and creating this amazing journey that I was excited about actually ended up being the biggest blessing, because what I found is every time I would catch myself being needed and pulled away around the 2 p.m., 2:30 p.m. range that kind of dangled with carpool, I would quickly hire somebody else. I figured out how I could train them to do this creative thing. We built systems around it, and then they went and they executed. And then all of a sudden, I had a team, and then I found I need somebody to help me with sales. So we built some systems around it. We trained them in and put them in that position. Now all of a sudden I needed somebody for another role. And so I just kept hiring and staffing and training and developing and refining my systems over about a 5-year period. And about 5 years in, I remember sitting on my couch. It was like Memorial Weekend, and I was reflecting on my previous week at the office, and I realized my team was handling everything. All of the day to day, I had zero involvement, and my clients were happy. Sales were coming in, and no one needed me for anything. And I looked at my week ahead, and it was the same situation. No one needed me to handle or execute anything to run the day to day. And it was this moment where probably most people are like, yes, I did it. And I looked at it and I panicked. I love working. So it was never my goal to accidentally work myself out of a job. But here I was, I had worked myself out of a position. And it was this moment where I went, what do I do now? What does this mean for my career? What is the next step? And as I was sort of in panic mode, to be honest, I was getting these messages on Instagram from other interior designers, from other stagers asking questions. Hey, how do you handle pricing objections? Where do you store your mattresses so that they can be optimized in the warehouse? And I realized we had really created a lot of systems around what we were doing day to day to allow us to be a profitable, successful business. And it became apparent that not everybody in the industry necessarily felt that way. A lot of artists and creatives are in this industry that fell into this because they love what they do, but they didn't have the business side behind it. And so I realized that I needed to find a way to kind of share the systems and knowledge that I had learned to help other people be successful. And a friend of mine was a franchise owner for a totally different business and said, "Hey, have you thought about franchising your business model?" And at first I went, "No, you can't franchise something creative. Like, we are in the design world. This doesn't work. It's all about systems. There's no way we can do this." But then I paused and I really thought about what we were doing, and I realized we're using only systems to create. And so I went down the journey of meeting with franchise consultants, meeting with franchise attorneys, and basically just said, here's my business model. Here's our P&L. Here's what we're doing every day. Can I even do this? Is this a franchisable concept? And everybody came back and said, you absolutely can franchise this. And so I decided to go down that journey, which is an extensive one. It requires you build out a standard operating procedure. And I remember I hid in my office for about 2 weeks. I closed the door, ignored the world, and I was like, I'm going to write down everything that we do, make sure my SOPs are perfect. I had like a 60-page document. I was so proud. I submitted up to our franchise consultant and I said, here, I've nailed it. Like, I was sure he was going to come back and tell me that I had aced it. And he came back with 3 pages of notes and he's like, this is a really great start, but you missed all of these things. And in my second iteration, that 60-page document became about a 320-page document. And so there's a lot of work that goes into really pausing and thinking about every system that exists in your business and addressing those things. So we built out the framework, and our first franchise owner came on board. She was about 3 hours. Her location is about 3 hours from our hometown location. And I said, I just want to watch you. I had heard all too often in the franchising world, sometimes they grow a little bit too fast and they're tripping over themselves. And that was not something I wanted to do. So I said, let's just see how this goes. Let's make sure we can replicate these efforts. I want to know every time you feel like you need extra knowledge or training or coaching. I want to know what's working. I want to know what's not working. And then we'll just see if this worked out. And at the end of her 12-month period, she had 3x'd the sales that I did in my first year. And I went, oh gosh, this actually worked. And it was this really cool moment to recognize and realize we did develop a system that we could replicate. And the best part, and this is why I think franchising is so great, is I was able to give my playbook to somebody else and they got to where I was so much faster than what it took me. And I saved her from thousands and thousands of dollars of stupid mistakes that I had made early on, just trying to figure out the game. And instead, anytime there was a challenge or a problem, she'd pick up the phone and she'd go, oh gosh, my mover scratched the floor. So what do I do? And it's like, don't worry, that's in your contract. But, the first time I did it, it wasn't in my contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was learning all of these methodical things. And so that was the start of our franchise journey. And once we realized we really had a system that we could replicate, we brought it to market. So today we have 20 locations across the country, primarily in the Southeast. And it has been an unbelievable journey. So incredibly rewarding for me to get to watch each of these individuals build and grow something that they feel so passionate about. Because I remember what it's like when you're starting those building days and you're putting in the hard work and the effort, but they've got a coach alongside them that can help teach and train and give the lessons learned so that we can hopefully avoid them from making similar costly mistakes that I made early on in my days.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love every part of that. As I'm consulting with new entrepreneurs, what should I go do? Or guys that are moving from one thing to another, I always say, go buy an existing business. And if you're not going to go buy an existing business, go buy a franchise. Because I tell this story years ago. I was helping two brothers out of California. They were working on cars. They needed to get into a bigger space. They were worried about it. They hired me. We got into a bigger space. Turns out the bigger space wasn't big enough. And long story short, they used the old spaces for inventory. But the brother came to me. I dealt with one brother. And the brother came to me. This is after all of this success, a couple years later. And he said, Jerry, we're paying you $500, $600 an hour for your advice. And it's really getting hard to justify that. How do we justify that? And I said, well, you could go back and do 25 years of business. You could fail massively. You could succeed massively. You could buy, build, and sell all kinds of business. You could have millions of conversations and thousands of hours of working. And then you can avoid all of the pitfalls that I helped you avoid over the last 2 years and whatever's coming up going forward. Or you can pay me $550 an hour and you can avoid all of that. And he was like, it really struck in his head right away. So I use that example. I think that's reflective of what you're doing there is, guys, entrepreneurs, if you're out there and you want to go do that next step or dive in as an entrepreneur and get out of the 9 to 5, a franchise, buying an existing business or a franchise business is fantastic for everything that you just said, meaning you went through it. You figured out the ways around it, or you had to dive straight into it and figure out how to climb out. And you can save somebody the trouble of doing that, and they will scale up that much quicker.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of that as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it still is a creative business. Who are you in that franchising model? Who do you see you bring on? Are you bringing on people who have existing businesses who want to do it better, so they're buying into the franchise? Or is it people from the outside that are coming in that going, I'm a creative. I want to get into this space. This is a great opportunity, just like we just discussed, to franchise my way into it and grow it from there. Who is your customer base?
Yeah, it's interesting. Our customer base does not come from Linden Creek primarily. They're from the outside. We have found a lot of success with individuals that come from a corporate background that really are fluent speaking in finance, marketing, sales, HR, you name it, and they are kind of tired of their 9 to 5. They want to make a pivot in this shift, but they want to do it in a different industry and they happen to like interior design. And so having this creative skill set is absolutely not necessary. And the reality is that is a portion and a fairly small portion of what day to day really looks like. What you're doing if you're going to own a Linden Creek is be a business owner. You're spending your time staffing and training and building relationships and selling and reviewing P&Ls. That's where the time is really spent. And so what's so fun to me is getting to watch on the regular these corporate individuals that are coming and transitioning over, and they're really freaked out by the fact that this is a totally new industry and they don't know anything about staging and design. And then we bring them in and they go, wait a second. I'm using all the same skills I had. I understand all of this. This is quick and this is easy to understand because they already have built these muscles. They already have the skills necessary to set themselves up for success for a new business model. It just happens to be instead of selling banking or whatever it may have been, now they happen to be selling interior design and home staging services.
With a freedom that doesn't involve a 9 to 5,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
probably the biggest part of the experience for them, particularly in the early days.
Yes, absolutely.
So, to that, Arch D, am I saying that right? Is that how you pronounce that?
Arched.
ARCHD?
It is arched.
Arched. I don't know why D is capitalized on what I looked up. So, arched. Talk to me about that. And I'm assuming that's just downstream of you started one business and you opened yourself up to an opportunity for a new business, one that you would use yourself. Is that what that is?
That's exactly what that is. So something really fun happened when we made the decision to franchise. It now freed up this ability for me to create in a new way where I could come up with these solutions that I always wish existed in the industry, but didn't make sense to custom build just for me and for my location, because now I could custom build them for everybody and we could all share them. And so Arch is exactly a representation of that. We wanted to build out a software solution that could be all encompassing to manage our day-to-day lives. Before this software, we had 2 or 3 software solutions and CRMs and invoicing tools, inventory management tools, and like 5 Excel spreadsheets to manage all of the day-to-day. And I used to hear from my directors of home staging that were, running the day to day and managing things. Please, Alisa, let me hire an admin to help manage all of the day to day and just juggling where the houses were. And it hurt my heart so much because I just thought there has to be a better way outside of just having somebody click the same buttons every single day and doing the same thing. And so I decided to go down a journey of what's involved if you were to build your own software solution. How do you actually do this? And fast forward to today, about 2.5 years later, we have a great solution that has been a beautiful way to really streamline and optimize everything that we're doing in our day to day. We have found that it saves an insane amount of labor time. We've cut down our labor costs probably by 25-30% just by utilizing this solution and automating so much of it. And so it's been a great resource to get to have again, because the secret sauce to business is efficiency. It's my favorite word. And so it's one way for us to continue to be even more efficient.
And so, is it a start to finish piece of software? A new customer comes in, inventory controls, cost controls, pricing across the board, all the way to finished product. House has been staged and everything is returned back to inventory. What is it exactly?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it is a CRM invoicing tool, but it also allows our designers to manage their inventory, make selections for the home. They get to pick and choose what products they want. So instead of walking through a warehouse physically and picking things out, they can go into a computer system, pick and choose the products that they want to bring into a home. It allows my team to all communicate and be on the same page about a project, review checklists and calendars without ever having to speak a word to each other. It also means if somebody calls out sick tomorrow, it's no problem. Somebody else can step in and execute it without any challenges or problems. And so it's been a really great way for us to just, again, streamline what we're doing in our day to day and allow us to see and manage that. The other great thing about it is In home staging specifically, inventory management is like the name of the game. There is so much that is involved in optimizing your inventory and making sure that your warehouse has just the right amount, but not too much, but not too little, because that's where your costs are going to really start to add up. And so this allows you to see your inventory levels, to manage what products are coming back and not coming back, so that you can plan as a business owner and have a better indication of when you need to stock up on sofas or nightstands, or maybe run a warehouse sale because inventory is adding up in your warehouse and it's a good time to sell some products off.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit too. This is a common occurrence when I come into a new business to consult. One of the first places I go is to inventory, and it seems like inventory and AR, those two things, is places where cash goes to die. And I think it's
Yeah.
because you're not holding it in your hands. And so, again, I always try to think about not only experienced entrepreneurs that are listening to this, but also the new entrepreneurs or possible entrepreneurs coming into the space, and they may not know what we're talking about and what that means. And so, I always say the only question, or excuse me, I always say that only dumb people don't ask dumb questions. And so I try to, it may seem rudimentary to you and I, at the same time, I want to make sure that we're educating people so they understand how important these things are. Cash flow and inventory are huge eaters of cash. In your case, your inventory is making you money as opposed to somebody selling something off the shelf and then having to restock it. Yours is making you money, but if it just sits there, like you alluded to earlier in the podcast, it's not making you any money. Therefore, that cash is out of your pocket. It's not sitting in the till. It's sitting on a shelf outside. Talk to us about inventory and the importance of, obviously, cash flow is king, but the importance of inventory from a cash perspective.
Yeah, inventory is absolutely king. And so if we have our inventory out, just like you said, we're making money. But something interesting happens. If our inventory is back, we're not making money, but it's also costing us money. So our warehouse costs oftentimes are one of our biggest expenses outside of labor. And so if I'm not optimizing my inventory, if I'm not thinking about versatility, and I have a console and a sofa that is so unique that I can't be using it in a house and it's taking up space in my warehouse, it might mean now that I need a bigger warehouse, which means my cost and my overhead is actually going to go up every month. And so we really like to focus on kind of what is our sweet spot, how much inventory is the right amount to have in that you can support projects, that you can say yes to something that's going to install next week and have it in your warehouse, but not do it too soon. Some of the things that we like to do to plan for that is to really be methodical about understanding what we have physically in our houses that are staged, knowing the timelines of when those are going to come back. Knowing your data is key. For us in the staging industry, it's knowing, we love to track how many days it takes until our inventory comes back into our warehouse. Days on market are great so that we can sell a project, but I care more about how many days my inventory is going to physically not be in my warehouse so that I can plan accordingly and know, if I say yes to this job, when am I getting this stuff back so I can say yes to another job?
Yeah,
The other
that is.
thing that's,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the other thing that's challenging with inventory in our business, and I know a lot of other business owners have this challenge, is we are a very seasonal business. So we really peak strong in the spring. Our summers are okay. The fall is really strong. And then we are dead at Christmas time because nobody wants to move at Christmas. And so because of that, we also have to think about the versatility and the flexibility of inventory management during that season. We even like to do some things just as hacks, knowing that December is the one month out of the year that we maybe have so many things in our warehouse that they don't fit well, that we'd rather opt to use storage units for that one month than size up into something even bigger, because it's going to help with cash flow the rest of the year. So always kind of re-asking yourself, what's the most cost-effective solution for the inventory I have? And when am I going to be able to get it back out the door so it's making me money is really crucial.
Yeah, I love that. I love the storage unit for one month out of the year. That's a fantastic idea. And it's really, I'm going to say it again, you want to drive yourself to pay attention to those non-sexy items like cash flow and inventory, and to your an entrepreneur who's had some success, their ego might get out in front of them. I'm raising my hand, and buy a bigger building than you need, even though it might be for only a month or two. So storage units, it looks like an additional cost. It doesn't make sense, but net over the course of the year, particularly when you're dealing with a non-cash item like inventory, it can be easy to fool yourself into doing something you shouldn't do. So I'm glad we dug down into that, because because again, that's the one and two things that I see in existing businesses that I go in to help. The first place I always look is inventory and in cash flow, and that seems to be a place that we always find something. And obviously, you're on top of that, particularly days in a house, days staged. That's where your money is made, not sitting in your warehouse. Let's flip to the shop. E-commerce, which I know nothing about. It scares the hell out of me. I hear it all. All I hear about e-commerce is that it has like a 98, 99% fail rate. So that's what I hear, right? For start new stores and what's the worst business you can go into. And so my advice historically has been for anybody, not quite in your situation where you're doing these add-on things, more specifically to, I'm going to go start a Shopify store, that sort of thing. But with that said, you did that. Obviously, you did it as an extension of your brand and what you're doing with your other businesses, which I love all of that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, e-commerce is a behemoth. Don't be fooled. When you start a new business, I'm notorious for this. I'm like, I know it's going to be an insane amount of work. I'm willing to put it in. I know I'm going to take on these risks. I know it's going to cost this amount of money. And without failure, I think every time it's 5 to 10 times more work and more money than you ever expect. And e-commerce was definitely one of those as well. For us, the biggest reason that I dove into it, because I had the same perspective that you did, Jerry. I was like, let me not touch that. I have zero interest in going down that road. But one of the lessons I learned with my very first franchise owner was that she really wanted somebody to help style and design accessory sets. And so one thing we learned in our design world is it's pretty easy to teach somebody what kind of furniture to place into a room, but where it gets challenging and you kind of need a little bit more skill set or it takes longer to train around is around accessories. So what am I going to put on my coffee table and how do I make it make sense? What am I going to put on a dining table to make it look beautiful? How does this vase go with this bowl and do we need something else at a different height? And so what we realized is we had an opportunity to build those accessory styling sets and sell them directly to our franchise owners so that they'd have the ease of having a pre-done set. So really cool things happened as a result. One, their design time got cut basically in half. And so it took half as long for them to design and select for a staged home than it did when they were doing it themselves. The second piece of it is we always focus on versatility. So we made sure that that setup that you loved on your dining table could also go on a coffee table and go on a console, and it wasn't just specific to one space, so it was optimizing their storage. And so then it became a problem of, great, we have these styling sets, how do we get them to our franchise owners? And the answer was opening up the Linden Creek shop in an e-commerce storefront. And so we opened the Linden Creek shop primarily as a purpose to be able to serve our franchise owners. But then it became something so much more than that. We also sell furniture, rugs. Now lighting just dropped and is in the process of still dropping actually this quarter. And so we are offering products directly to consumers as well as to our franchise owners, where they can get access to products that are typically to the trade, that aren't always open to and available to the general public, and have access to these beautiful pieces. But one of the things that really makes the Linden Creek shop unique are the styling sets. So whether it is accessories that you can put on your coffee table or pillows you want to set in your living room, we don't actually sell independent vases or independent pillows. We sell a full set, so that if you're in that situation where you go, I feel like my living room could use a refresh, but I have no idea how to put these vases together, you can actually purchase the pre-done setup and place it in your home and you're set up and ready to go, sort of like having a designer, but you didn't have to pay the cost for it.
Yeah, and I see that's your kind of your hook there, where other people in the e-commerce space, I was going to say until you said that you put it all together that way and sold it as a set, I was fascinated that you could find margin selling a lamp or something of that nature in that highly competitive market that is e-commerce on the net. But you found a hook to bring it in, which provides you margin by selling it together in a way that somebody else doesn't necessarily do that.
That's exactly right. And it's a cost-effective way and solution for consumers to be able to access design level skills, access a designer for maybe something that's smaller in their home without having to pay the fee and the cost for having an interior designer.
Yeah, that's and let me ask you, do you have a sense of in that business men versus women that are customers? And I ask that only because I know that like most of my buddies, none of us are any good at design, and we know what we. Again, I'll say this for about the third time because it's so true. We know what we like when we see it. But ask me to design it, yeah, I'm no good at it. So I would think that in that context, single guys developing their, putting their houses together or whatever, having something in front of them like that to see it. I don't know if that's been a big market for you yet, but that certainly seems like that'd be exactly what I would look for if I were going through and trying to outfit my house.
It is certainly a part of our market. I would say it's interesting. You do have those gentlemen that go, I just don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Hands off the wheel, you do your thing, work your magic, and we're grateful for it. Honestly, sometimes those are some of our favorite clients because they're so trusting. They just let you kind of work your masterpiece. But I would say on the flip side, most of our clients still primarily are women because they care more. You still have those
Yeah.
single men that are like, I don't really care if my house is not perfect and beautiful. And so most of our clients do tend to be females, but we do definitely have a handful of those single men that are excited for the assistance and the help.
Yeah, that's great. Where does this is the most cliche question. I didn't even have this question in my list of questions, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I love your drive. And I can hear it in your voice. I love the story about your daughters, and 2:30 always gets cut out, and that's very important. So I'm going to ask you that cliche question that I hate to ask, but I think it will tell us about you. Where's the drive come from to put all of these things together? You can hear the excitement in your voice about these businesses and these things that you were doing, but even having said that, the excitement in your voice about being in the pickup line at 2:30 was even more. And so that one, I think everybody can understand where that comes from. Where's the drive come from? And maybe it's in that pickup line is where the drive comes from. It certainly is for me and my children. Where's the drive come from to do all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say most of it really is around problem solving. I think if there's one thing I've learned, it's that I tend to accidentally fall into a problem in the industry. When Linden Creek started, I thought we were going to be middle market. And very quickly, by our third house that we had staged, they said, you guys are luxury and you're the thing that we've been missing. And I went, shoot, I better be a luxury staging company now. We're going to solve this problem. With Arch, it was the same thing. There is this painful problem and lack of software solution that exists, and no one else is doing it. So I guess I'm just going to have to do it because the industry needs it. And so I think that's been the biggest driving force for me is I see a problem that needs to be solved, and I see the impact that it's going to have potentially when it gets solved to make other people's lives better. And that becomes this driving force. That becomes the thing that wakes you up early in the morning, that gets you excited. That's the thing that keeps you up late at night while you're still solving and problem solving through it. But it's knowing that there's a challenge and a problem that has to be fixed. And once you fix it, you're going to impact lives in a beautiful way. And that, to me, there is nothing that drives me more than the impact that I get to have in other people's lives.
Yeah, that's in that lesson is I say at the end of many of my podcasts that opportunities are everywhere, but you have to go get them. Goes back to don't do what you love, do what you can figure out that you're good at and sell to somebody at a profit. But that opportunities are everywhere, and so many entrepreneurs have their heads down. In your context, you sell this thing, middle market, and that's it. But then something else presents itself. I see it. I mean, I've seen it hundreds of times where the entrepreneur will say, no, I do this. And I go, wait. But what might that be? Nope, I do this. And they get stuck in that pattern. Clearly, you do not have that gene.
I don't. And, the flip side of that, though, is I've also had to learn to say no to myself lots of times because there are probably 1,000 other ideas that I'd love to tackle and problems I'd love to solve. But if I solve all of them, I'm not going to do any of them well. And so it is this fine balance of restraining yourself and choosing to do a couple of things and do them exceptionally well.
Yeah, I agree. Last question. Clearly, you are having to scale from not just the local business, but then also as you've grown and now you're franchising in, I think you said 20 different cities. And so with that said, you need to continue to grow. You need to continue to add people, which is the toughest part of running any business, is that operational administrative side. So talk to me about how you do that exactly. As you continue to grow, you continue to add people. The slow times, what do you do in December when there's no work? And the busy times, how do you scale up for that? With that kind of growth, how do you preserve the culture, the craft? How do you keep that human side of it in place the way you want it to be while you're scaling or while you're cutting back for the slow seasons? How do you handle all that?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's ever evolving and you're always learning and pivoting and getting better at that. Simply put, the secret sauce is hiring A players. And I know that's cliche, that's what every business owner says, but there is so much truth to hiring A players. I am a huge proponent of let me hire somebody that's so much better at their job than what I would be capable of, because if we're trusting me to be the best one at every little ounce of everything, we're never going to grow. I need people that are really niched into their specific role and their responsibility within the organization and can think about how to make it better and how to improve and how to provide a better client experience. And that's going to be kind of the secret to it all. I was actually, I've reflected a lot the last 6 months on our culture at Linden Creek and who we are. And actually just sent an email out to my team and I said, not in a bad way, but we're all a little kind of crazy. We are these people that really feel like there is a mission and a purpose and a passion behind what we do. And it's the thing that outside of our office hours, I don't ask my team to be thinking about Linden Creek, but they do. I don't ask my team to be problem solving and innovating on a Saturday morning, but they do oftentimes in their day to day. And that's something that I'm grateful for. But that's that A player aspect that is so crucial and so huge. And when you build a culture of A players, the other interesting thing that happens is if you get a B or a C player in, they all point and go, this one doesn't belong because it
Mm-hmm.
sticks out like a sore thumb. And that's
Mm-hmm.
a really beautiful way where when our team gets so big, I don't get a chance to have one-on-one opportunities with all of my team members all the time. There are times I may not see a team member for a couple of weeks even. And so having a team of A players that really understands and knows the mission and believes it in their soul, they're the ones that oftentimes help you go, that's another good fit for our team that's going to make us better, or that's one that's maybe just not fitting the way that we need them to. So I found that that's really the secret to growth, and building and sustaining something new and beautiful. And they get excited when you invest in other A players that are going to elevate who we are and elevate the brand. That excites them. Now, in
Yeah,
terms of oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, just to dovetail off of that. I want entrepreneurs to hear what you're saying because it is important. It's not important that we, as the entrepreneur, we as the business owner, get the credit that it was our idea, that it was our plan, that we put it together. That's not important. Execution is important, and the company does well, and everybody's growing. And so often, entrepreneurs, quite frankly, I think the ego gets in the way, and they want to make sure that they've got a piece of every one of those things. And in reality, that's going to limit the ability to grow if you're doing that, as you have just so eloquently described.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And give them credit, give them props for the incredible things they're doing because they're just going to do more of it and it's just going to make your organization better. So that's something that I've really harnessed and I really enjoy. And I think, there are slow seasons, especially in our business. So it comes down to strategizing, and delegating. Are there other things we can be doing? Can we be repairing broken furniture? Can we be reorganizing some systems in our warehouse that maybe didn't work the way that we wanted them to this year before we get busy and we can't see straight? And so really being methodical about, hey, what SOPs can we revisit that maybe we need to provide more clarity on, or training tutorials do we need to adjust because there's still some confusion on it. So it's a great chance during these slow seasons to come up with your list as the CEO before it gets slow and go, hey, these are the things we're going to knock out during this next 6 weeks when we're twiddling our thumbs. It's not our time to twiddle our thumbs. It's our time to make ourselves better before we start running again.
And you do your best. You don't try to bring in seasonal help or lay people off or any of that. You try to keep people throughout.
We do try to keep people throughout. I love good people and I don't want to lose them. And so we'll be intentional with our cash flow purposes of, hey, we're going to conserve our cash knowing that it's going to be a little bit tighter during that season. But also we also know that these are the like odd jobs behind the scenes that are going to help us be better later on. And so it's maybe not direct payroll that's tied to a specific project, but it is something that's going to impact our bottom line and our profitability next year.
I love everything about your story. I can hear the passion in your voice. It's infectious. An hour has gone by, and I always know that I had a good podcast when I don't have to look at the clock to see how much time is left. And this, I have 10 more questions just off the top of my head I could go to, but I want to thank you for coming on. I'm so happy we had this conversation because, again, so many artists try to start their businesses, and then I have to come in and tell them what crappy business people they are, but what fantastic artists they are. And
Yeah.
I think, in a way, you have shown that to any of them listening right now, as a creative entrepreneur, we'll call it, that are stuck between that art and business, that you can take a page from your book, which is that you can build a framework that will scale up, let you run your business, let you be profitable at the same time, while also being able to kind of express that creativity and not be afraid to kind of take what you've done and the lesson that we'll hear here and apply it to their own lives and to their own businesses. So I think that's fantastic, because I think that's an underserved market out there, because artists do struggle when it comes to being businesses, and just generally business across the board. I always say business is business is business. And the way that you've gone from one business to a second business to a third business, all feeding off of that first business, is absolutely just a story that everybody should pay attention to and listen to, particularly that you started from scratch and you really didn't have any idea what you were doing. So that is my long-winded way of saying, Alisa, how do people get a hold of you? How do they reach out to you should they want to be a part of what you obviously are doing and what you have going on?
Yeah, definitely make the connection. I love new connections, new relationships, and new friends. You can find us at lindencreek.com is the best approach. It's linden-creek.com, and that's where you can find out more about our franchising opportunities. I'm also active on LinkedIn, so feel free to drop me a message on there. It's Alisa Sparks, LC.
And as you guys can tell, I appreciate Alisa. Thanks for coming on the Kronos Group podcast. And as I say all the time, guys, opportunities are everywhere. You got to go get them. And as you can see from Alisa's story, that's exactly what she did. So, Alisa, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. That was a great podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.